The New York Giants deliver another primetime stinker. We're going to break it all down, and boy, do we have a lot to cover. That's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And we thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Giant fans, we're back to yet another loss. All right. And I don't know about you guys and gals, but I am absolutely frustrated with this team. The Giants offense was a big problem last night in the loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, a 22-9 loss. So we are going to start off by talking about the offensive offense. We're going to go then in segment 2 and talk about the red zone, which has been a huge problem. And then, is there a solution to what is going on with the Giants? So that's our list of topics for today. Again, welcome on in to everybody. Let's get into it. All right, offensive offense. Now, this is what really gets my goat here. Brian Daboll was hired from the Buffalo Bills, where he'd been a successful offensive coordinator, for his offensive prowess, if you will. All right, he was supposed to be this guru, this guy who brings an explosive offense, a creative offense, a guy who, a high-scoring offense. We have yet to really see that, except for maybe a spot here and there from Brian Daboll's offense. All right, now, for the better part of the last few years, and I'm guilty of this too, I have said, oh, it's the quarterback, Daniel Jones. Get him out of here. No good. But you go and you look at what Daniel Jones is doing in Indianapolis, all right? What he's averaging, the fact that he's 3-0 and that he has the type of offense that the Giants should have with players that maybe are on par, maybe a little better in some spots. Folks, it wasn't Daniel Jones. So let me get this out of the way right here and now. Daniel Jones, I apologize because I thought you were the problem. And it's not. You're not. It's the system. And I'm going to give you some examples with what I'm talking about. All right. So let's start off with what the Kansas City Chiefs did to the New York Giants and why the Giants, for whatever the reason, they knew it was coming, but yet they didn't know how to counter it. All right. So they were outcoached, in my opinion. The Chiefs played deep safety, 2 deep safeties on approximately 78.9% of their snaps, according to Next Gen Stats. When you have 2 deep safeties like that, what's the answer? The answer is to run the ball. Bring one of those safeties down into the box. And then if you see one of those safeties down in the box, then maybe you adjust and you throw the deep ball, which the Giants were trying to do with no success. What did the Giants do? They just, they ran the ball. I think they had 27 rushing attempts to something like 32 passing attempts. But the run designs, slow developing. Cam Scatterboo was probably the bright spot on the offense. The kid ran hard. He ran well. But the Giants had no answers. And, the 2 deep safeties, Malik Neighbors had a guy on top of him literally the whole game, which is why he only caught 2 passes. He was also one of the targets of Russell Wilson on one of Russell Wilson's interceptions. So why the Giants, even though they probably knew this is what Steve Spagnuolo was going to do because it was on tape, This is exactly how they handled the Eagles. The Giants couldn't come up with any kind of creative ideas to defeat that kind of coverage. And it cost them. It cost them deep. Okay. Now, what could they have done? You're probably asking. They could have maybe tried Malik Neighbors in the slot. I mean, how do you not figure out a way to scheme open your best players? You look at the Rams, for example. The Rams always kind of seem to figure out a way to scheme open Puka Nacua. And you mean to tell me that the Giants couldn't figure out a way to scheme open Malik Neighbors? How is that possible? It's almost like they come up with this game plan and they stick with it, regardless of whether it works or not. And it's just not acceptable. It's not. And, here's the other thing. The safeties, for what it's worth, Dallas ran a similar defense against the Giants in week 2. And the Giants exploded for 450 yards on offense. But the Kansas City safeties, a lot better than what the Dallas Cowboys put out there on the field. And it just seems like with the Giants, it's the moon ball or nothing with Russell Wilson. And, the moon ball is great, but you have to be able to hit some of the shorter stuff. You have to be able to hit some of the things on the outside. You have to be able to do other things than the moon ball. The moon ball is great because, Russell Wilson's not ideally, the ideal height for an NFL quarterback, but he's made a living on the moon ball. That's not going to work all the time. It's like everybody knows it's coming. And, oh, by the way, was there much action going on offense in the middle of the field? No, there was not, which is another problem. So, Malik Neighbors to have 2 catches for 13 yards, that's gross. There's no other word I can think of. That is just not acceptable. And, maybe you put Malik Neighbors in the slot, which I've been calling for a while now. Maybe now you get him over the middle and you get some of those big chunk plays that you were looking for. And the Giants just didn't do it. It's like they came in with their plan. This was the plan, and they were going to live or die by that plan. And they didn't exactly live by that plan, did they? 1 touchdown, 1 field goal? Not enough. And, you can't even really blame the defense for this one because the defense hung in there until, they couldn't anymore because the offense just wasn't living up to their part. And again, I go back to the point I made. Brian Daboll was supposed to be this offensive guru. And can we honestly say that he and his system, with maybe a couple of exceptions here and there where they've gotten lucky, that this offensive system is, groundbreaking or exciting or productive? No, we can't. Some of the decisions, 4th down, they keep going for it on 4th down. Now, I get it. They didn't have a kicker. Graham Gano pulled the groin, which, is a whole nother issue, by the way. So they probably felt like they had to go for it on 4th down. But this team hasn't been good. This isn't the first time they've had to maybe go for it a little bit more often on 4th down. They were 3 of 8 on 4th down this year. Okay? 3 of 8 on 4th down. That's not going to cut it. All right? Yesterday's game, I could see why, but on the whole, no, doesn't cut it. 3rd down, they're 1 of 10 on 3rd down in yesterday's game. That's another problem. So this offense has a lot of problems, ladies and gentlemen. And in the next segment, I'm going to specifically hone in on the red zone, which was also a huge problem for the Giants yet again. So we'll take a quick break, and then I'll cover that with you right after this. This episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Oh, gosh, folks, I am so sorry you have to watch such bad football. I really am. The Giants losing to the Kansas City Chiefs 22-9. They kept the game close, but the offense just couldn't get it done. So we're going to talk about the red zone in just a moment, but real quick, I want to mention on tomorrow's show, I have Justin Tuck on the program. I spoke with Justin on Friday. We talked about the defense, the run defense, a whole bunch of other things. So that will be on Tuesday's show. So I hope you will check that out. And then, of course, we'll look at maybe some plays from this game and just continue to dissect this disaster that this season has started out as. So let's now talk about the red zone, or as I have called it, as you know, the dead zone. The Giants on Sunday night, 1 of 3 in the red zone. They are now 2 of 10 in the red zone. Russell Wilson, when passing inside the opponent's 20, 4 of 18 in 3 games. Ouch. That is not good. Not good at all. So what is the problem? Well, there's a bunch of things. From plays that develop and take forever to develop, all right, meaning that they're going wide when the defenders have a shorter field to defend and they can kind of string things out. That's part of the problem. Part of the problem is no creativity down in the red zone, not a whole lot of physicality. I mean, guys are losing at the point of attack. The other issue I see, having Russell Wilson drop back and try to find a open receiver, which quite honestly, again, is he able to see over the massive bodies that are crowding, his passing lanes? I wonder about that. I mentioned in the other segment before, maybe move him around a little bit so that he can find an open, lane so he could actually see who's really covered and who's not. I mean, the picks thrown to the end zone, it shouldn't be happening. But above all, I think, the biggest thing is the lack of creativity. Passing, I mean, they lean more on the passing game, it just seems, down by the red zone, rather than trying to just impose their will with the run game. And I don't know if that's because they don't have confidence in the offensive line to knock guys back. Could be. I mean, I mentioned that the physicality has lacked down there, but it just seems the Giants are too darn predictable down there. And by the way, they have a package of plays, red zone plays for Jackson Dart. Well, you know what? That's all well and good. It worked maybe, against Dallas. But you know what? Teams watch film. And after a while, they see, oh, okay, this is how the Giants are thinking. These read options with Jackson Dart. The kid doesn't really throw the ball. I think he's attempted, 1 pass so far in 3 games? So after a while, you kind of know what's coming when you see him come onto the field. So why put him out there if you're going to have him hand off the ball? The answer? Maybe they think that, they'll respect the kid's legs and his ability to run. But again, it's been the same thing over and over and over, to where you see it and you're like, oh, they're going to run the ball. The kid's going to do a read option. So we're going to be in position to defend it because we know what's coming. And that, to me, folks, is the biggest issue with this Giant team. Defenses line up against that offense, and they seem to know what's coming because there's no creativity, no imagination. And when they do get creative, which is very rare, it seems, the execution isn't there. And that is a tough combination to overcome. The moonball, like I said, it's great, but you can't really do it much down in the red zone, can you? So, what is Russell Wilson really going to be known for down there? His mobility isn't what it used to be when he was out in Seattle. So, what are the alternatives? Do you go to Jackson Dart full time? You could. But it just seems like, they're turning this kid, right, at least right now, just to get him, a pass here or a play here or whatever, to get him in front of live reps. Don't turn him into a Taysom Hill. I mean, look, it works fine down in New Orleans for Taysom Hill, but that's not what this kid's future is. Taysom Hill's been being that spot player, that role player for the Saints now for what? All of his career? That's not going to be Jackson Dart's calling. There's got to be other ways. I don't know what they are. That's up to the coaches to figure out. They're the offensive, quote unquote, masterminds. But what they're doing just isn't working. It's just not working. And, they talk about processes. We believe in the process. We're going to stick to the process. I'm sorry. With all due respect, stuff that word, okay? The processes aren't working. The results aren't there. And you know what? Seats got a heck of a lot hotter last night. And not just Daboll. I think you could throw in Mike Kafka as well. Because it's just, that game was just so unimaginative with the play calling and disappointing. And I can tell you folks, John Mara, not a happy camper. None of us are. From the media's perspective, from the fans' perspective. John Mara, who said and made it very clear at the end of last season that he had to feel better about this team at the end of the coming season. I don't think he was feeling much better about what he saw because it was more of the same. So, I don't know what the answer is. Now, is it Jackson Dart? Well, we're going to talk about that in the next segment. But real quick, I want to mention the defense because I haven't really talked about the defense yet. The defense held in there. But that being said, there were a few problems with the defense. Dropped interceptions, some more missed tackles. Bobby Okereke, what was he thinking on that play where Mahomes fumbled and Bobby it looked like he tried to pick it up and run for the score rather than falling on it? Little things like that. And I know heat of the moment, you do strange things or you don't necessarily have an opportunity to think things through. But my goodness, little basic fundamental things just continue to sabotage this team week in and week out. And it's just getting old at this point. It's just, a change is coming. So that being said, we'll talk about what kind of change could be coming right after this. Hey, Giant fans, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Hey, Giant fans, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it's player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting fanduel.com to get started. That's fanduel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And what a way to start off a new week, right? Giants losing 22-9, Sunday Night Football. They're just not good in prime time. And to think, coming up in a few weeks, they've got the Eagles on Thursday Night Football. Can you imagine what that game is going to look like? But that being said, the Giants have to think about making some changes. Now, what can they do at this point? The low-hanging fruit, if you will, would be to bench Russell Wilson and put Jackson Dart in there. Now, you can make the argument that Russell Wilson is not the long-term future. He is not the quarterback he was when he was at Seattle. Turn the page, rip the Band-Aid off, and just go to the future. You can make that argument. And it's not a horrible argument. But here is where I think you have to fill in the hole, so to speak. If these coaches aren't going to be creative, aren't going to, be more imaginative, if you will, is Jackson Dart really going to solve the problem? Now, maybe, he's a little taller quarterback. Maybe, yes. Got a little more of a lively arm. Can run the ball, like I said. He might. He could be the salvation for this offense. But that's an awful lot to put on this kid. Because basically where you're at now, go back to 2019 when the Giants started off 0-2 and head coach Pat Shurmur decided, hey, I've had enough of Eli Manning. I'm going to throw my rookie quarterback, Daniel Jones, in there. We all know what happened, right? And then here's the other thing. Would the Giants throw the kid out there to help save jobs? Well, that's the only lifeline this team has, to be honest with you. Brian Daboll wants to save his job and the job of his coaches. He might have no choice but to put Jackson Dart out there. Now, would I do it against the Chargers coming in? Granted, the season is circling the drain, but I don't know. Myself, I might wait until the Saints game the following week because maybe that's a little, easier opponent just to kind of break the kid in for a full-time game. But desperate times call for desperate measures. And it is possible that Daboll, who obviously after the game Sunday night did not announce who was going to start. It is possible that Daboll, after the game on Sunday, did not announce who was going to start against the Chargers next weekend. It's possible he makes that move. Okay? Now, the other possibility is that one of the coordinators is going to have to fall on the sword. And that, folks, would probably be defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. Because, look, if Daboll fires Mike Kafka, which I don't think he would, that's basically kind of admitting that your offensive system that you brought in ain't working the way it should be. So I could see a scenario where Shane Bowen is the one who has to fall on the sword for how the team has done. Should he be? Well, again, I didn't think the defense played horribly compared to the offense last night. But, obviously I've had my concerns with Bowen and his system and some of the fundamentals. But I don't know. I don't think, in this case, you can totally blame him for the loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. So, that being said, if the Giants fall to 0-4, and there is a very, very good chance of that happening, the Chargers are 3-0, they're riding high, I think you could see a change. I think, if I had to guess, and I'm probably wrong here, I think the Giants stick with Russ another week. And then if they falter again, we see Jackson Dart week 5. And could we see a coaching change? Like I said, I think it would be Bowen who gets the axe. Because Daboll, Could Daboll maybe take over the play calling again? Well, folks, if Jackson Dart gets in there, I think there's a possibility that could happen because Daboll has been attached to Jackson Dart's hip. And I think the long-term plan was that once the kid was ready to play full-time, that they would consider giving the play calling back to Daboll, who had been working so closely with Jackson Dart. So I could see that scenario or that change happening. Will it make it better? Well, it might. But again, if the other 10 guys on offense aren't doing what they need to do, if the creativity isn't there, if, the schemes, if they're being out-schemed by the opponent, it doesn't matter if I'm playing quarterback. The results are going to be the same. And, it's just been a really, really bad showing by the Giants. And I just don't know if one guy necessarily is going to fix it. We can hope. I know the fans want to see it. They want to see Jackson Dart in there. I want to see him in there. But I just don't know if that kid's going to necessarily fix what ails this team because the problems, in my opinion, run so much deeper. And, there's just so much more work to do. Just when you think they finally got it right, they don't. So we'll see what Brian Daboll says on Monday. He's supposed to speak to the media on Monday afternoon, and I'm sure he'll announce who's going to be the starting quarterback, or he might leave the door open. Who knows? But Giant fans, I feel for you. Trust me, it's tough for me as well. We're all in this together. I think we all need a big group hug to start this week off. So anyway, keep it here all week long. I'll have updates for you. I'll have more content. Again, Justin Tuck will be with me on Tuesday's show. I hope you will check that out. As we wrap things up and before we say goodbye, folks, I want to thank you as always for making the Locked On Giants podcast part of your day. The NFL season is finally here. So for your next listen, get a double dose of Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler, the Madman Rowland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, that'll do it for me. I will see you again tomorrow. Have a good one.